Pull up a chair around the fire, kids. Let me tell you a story about Mike Todd. Hi, my name's Greg Murray. I'm the public address announcer for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and this is Into the Stands.
Greg, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Dave, thanks for having me. Good to talk some hockey.
Absolutely, we're almost there. We're down to like 44 days, I think. The sign behind me is not right. My
Yeah, it's been a way
chalkboard
too
wall back there.
long.
It really has been. So to start out and kind of get right into it, you went to school for broadcast journalism. So you had an idea you wanted to be in the like radio broadcast scene from the beginning. Where did that desire come from? Was there
I
someone that you
actually
kind
went to
of
college. Yeah, I actually went to Ohio University. Go Bobcats! OU, yeah.
I'm a
As
zip,
a
so I'm sorry.
what's that?
I'm a zip, so I'm sorry.
It's okay. That's
Eh,
okay. We probably won just about as many football games,
yeah.
when we went to school. I went to OU as a business major, and that lasted about a month, and I decided I didn't want to, carry a briefcase and wear a suit, so I decided to check out the college radio station, and that came off of an experience that I had as a senior in high school. I was asked to do a couple of public service announcements, anti-drunk driving, prom promise PSAs, by a girl that I worked with at a Kroger store who worked part time at a radio station in town. And she asked my girlfriend and I to come down and do these. And we went down and did them. I thought it was really kind of cool. My girlfriend really didn't care all that much. And I had people coming up to me in the high school hallways going, "I heard you on the radio. How did you do that? How did that happen?" So I was kind of bitten by that bug, but it actually goes back even further because on the bus to the 6th grade, I was the entertainment on the bus. Now, this was back before he was exposed as a real creepy guy, but I listened to Bill Cosby albums that my parents had had.
Oh, yeah.
And I would listen to them over and over and over again, and I would recite those on the bus. And, like, beginning to end, word for word, the whole bit, 7, 8-minute bits on the school bus. And I was the entertainment, and I never realized that until fast forward 25 some odd years when I'm doing these Blue Jackets education events for high schoolers. Somebody asked me how I got into it, and that kinda came back to my mind. So I've always been made to do what I do. I just didn't realize it until I had that opportunity. And by the way, the girlfriend in high school that I did my first PSAs with, I ended up marrying her. She's now the business manager of our company. So my wife was actually at my very first, gig. It was really cool.
That's incredible. You started doing that in high school. Did you do any PA work in college, or what was your first PA gig, and how did that go?
My first PA gig was the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Really?
It was the very first preseason game of franchise, history, and it went bad.
Do you mind me asking what made it so bad?
I had no idea what I was doing. Now, look, we could fill the entire hour with just stories from the first year of my Blue Jackets tenure. But, um, so I got the job. I got into the job because I worked at the time at QFM 96. Our studios were downtown at the
Mhm.
time in Columbus, and I loved working down there. At the time, we were owned by CBS,
Yeah.
and I was talking to one of our affiliates in Philadelphia, and I was telling him I could just see the corner of the NHL building that they were putting up. And he said, "Did you try out for the PA announcer's job?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "Never really thought of it." I was not a hockey guy. And because I had one friend in high school that played hockey, and we thought he was weird. It wasn't on our radar, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And he said, "Did you try out for the PA announcer's job?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "Well, I never thought of it." And he goes, "You ought to." And I'm like, "That might be fun." So I called up Dave Pateson. I'm sure you know that name. Dave was like
Mhm.
the
Yep,
first guy that the CBJ brought in to kind of get things off the ground
yep.
before Doug McLean came in and took the reins as our first GM. And I called him up in the fall of 99 and I said, "Dave, I want to be the public address announcer." And he said, "Okay, we haven't hired the person that would hire you, but here's what I suggest you would do." So over that winter, I went to Pittsburgh, Chicago, and Nashville, sat with the PA guys, talked to the game operations people, kind of got an idea of what I was in for. The following summer, summer of 2000, I got a call from Kimberly Kershaw, who is our first game day event coordinator, director, and she said I was one of 5 guys that they were going to interview, that we were gonna get auditions, and we never auditioned in the arena because it was still being built.
Yeah, it didn't I guess it didn't exist. I didn't think about that.
So, yeah, so the first auditions happened at the Athenaeum across town, and I went in and I did it, and at that time, it came down to me and another guy who was at another radio station, I believe, in town, and he and I did private the private opening of Nationwide Arena, then we did the public
Mhm.
grand opening of Nationwide Arena, and then we were supposed to split, preseason games. I was gonna do, like, the first 2, he was gonna do the middle 2, and I was gonna do the last one. I think there were 5 that year. For whatever reason, he bailed on his 2. He said he couldn't do them. So I actually flew home from a family vacation with a
Wow.
9-month-old and a 3-year-old. Um, my wife still loves me even though I did that. Uh Yeah, we actually went on vacation with her parents. I flew home and did those games. I did all 5 of the preseason games.
Wow.
First preseason game was awful. It was 10 minutes before we were supposed to start the game, and there's no announcer's microphone.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The penalty box, I was working at from the penalty box at the
Yeah,
time. There was no room, so I was standing in the back with my notes, holding one of those key microphones. So it's the
yeah.
mic and the stand, and on the base of the microphone is a button you had to push, and I'm announcing this way. So there was that, and then there was the multiple penalty against the Detroit Red Wings that I had no idea how to announce. Turned to Kimberly and I said, "How do you want me to announce this?" And she said, "What do you mean? Didn't you get the fax I sent you?" And I went, "No, the fax machine's in the sales office." And she rattled it off. She's like, "Visitors, majors, visitors, minors, home, majors, home, minors, time." I'm like, "Uh." So I did my best. I butchered it. It was terrible. And Paul Stewart, NHL Hall of Fame referee, walks into the penalty box in his skates and points directly at me, and he says, "You did it wrong. Do it again." Only thing that went through my mind was, "My lord, what have I gotten myself into?"
Oh my god.
So, yeah, it was interesting.
Th That's incredible.
It was interesting.
That's a great way to say it, and, I mean, I wasn't around Columbus at the time. Those preseason games, I mean, were there good amount of people there, or were they still trying to kinda
Oh my
drum up
gosh, yeah.
interest in the game? I figured being a new team, but
Listen, Columbus, Ohio is one of the best sports towns in the entire country. We've had our
100%.
struggles with winning consistently and getting deep and into playoffs and stuff like that. But when it has happened, I defy you to find a city in the entire league that will support its team. The the games against Pittsburgh in particular and Tampa in 2019 when we swept the Lightning were so incredibly off the hook in that building. There were speakers that had to be replaced in our sound system because we had to play it so loud to get over the crowd.
Really?
Oh my
That
gosh, yeah. I
that's crazy.
defy you to find a fan base that is as rabid for their team, and even look at last year,
I was just about to
how
say,
bad
like
and difficult last year was for us. End of the season, there were still, I mean, tons of people in the stands, whereas down in other markets of
mhm,
teams that were in the playoffs, they had, like, thousands and thousands of seats empty
yeah,
for teams that are winning. We've got
yeah,
a phenomenal fan base.
yeah, I that's one of my favorite parts of being in Columbus is being a part of that. Um, and I have friends that they still talk about the Tampa series, and it was my one friend said he couldn't even hear the cannon go off, which is insane to think
Oh,
about.
yeah. Yeah, it was, that series was so telling of the fans of this team. Um, that was the most success that we had had. You go back to another sports hero in Columbus, James Buster Douglas, and I put that sweep of Tampa Bay right up there with James Buster Douglas knocking out Mike Tyson in Tokyo.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so coming off that preseason game then, I'm guessing
Yeah,
you
we
would
asked
never I'm guessing you would never imagine, that you'd be able to walk around the city or walk around the arena and seeing people wearing T-shirts that have your signature call on them, which is the power play call.
yeah, the jackets
Uh,
on the power play. I'm still
yeah,
waiting for Homage to send me one of the new ones.
I'm surprised you haven't gotten one yet.
I know. That's okay.
It
That's
is what it
okay.
is.
I've got sweatshirts and T-shirts. Go out and buy one.
So,
Get your picture taken with me so I can tweet it when we go to Jackets on the Power Play.
are we able to hear that call?
Everyone asks me that
I
every
figured.
time I do a talk, and I tell them the same thing. You gotta come down to the arena and see it live.
You know what? It's good motivation. It's worth it for anybody who hasn't heard it. It's worth it. So then the signature call being jackets on the power play, is that your favorite one, or is there something you enjoy saying more just because of, it sounds good or it sets something off in the arena? It's not like we have a giant cannon that goes off when certain things are said.
Yeah, I like announcing goals more.
Yeah, well, yeah, those are fun. Those are more fun for sure.
No, I love Jackets on the Power Play. Actually, when my kids were little, so now my boys are 26 and 24. But I remember we were shopping somewhere, and my youngest one, who was very outgoing at the time, we're in the store, and he actually told the sales guy, "My dad's the Jackets on the Power Play guy." And I'm like, "All right, I was cool to my kids."
That's awesome.
So
That had to be a good feeling.
so the story behind Jackets on the Power Play also comes from the first season, and also at the hands of one Kimberly Kershaw. So we're getting ready to go on a power play. I don't even know what game it was or how deep into the season we were. And she said, "Hey, I want you to say Jackets on the power play." And I said, "Okay." Turned the mic on. I did it. It was totally lame. It was nothing like what I did. And I turned the mic off and I said, "What do you think?" She goes, "Oh, that was okay." She goes, "Next time, I want you to do it like really big." And I went, "Well, okay." Turned the mic on, and literally what came out of my face is the exact way that I do it now. I've actually watched during the pandemic when they were doing replays of like season 1, I would
Yeah.
listen and go, "Oh my gosh, it sounds exactly the same." What came out of my face is what is now the Jackets on the Power Play. Turned the mic off. I looked over at her because she sat right next to me. And I said, "How was that?" She nodded her head and she went, "Yep, that'll work." And that's what it's been for 23 seasons now.
That's incredible. Do you know how many games you have done at Nationwide Arena? Because I've
880 regular season and playoff games.
that's
I
incredible.
may or may not in my book every year write the number of games. Yeah, 880.
That's awesome. Never missed a game, right?
Never.
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 That's
I
wild.
I did the first year I did, Pittsburgh. That was the year Mario Lemieux came back. I think that
Yep.
may have been the only game that Mario Lemieux played in Nationwide Arena. I think it may have been. I did that with a temperature over 101. I took Theraflu. I had been home for 2 days sick. I took Theraflu. I went down to the arena, came back, went to bed for 2 more days, and then was over it. Um, there was a time during the pandemic where I thought that I may have COVID, that there was talk of me possibly missing a game. Fortunately, my test was negative. I was able to do the game. After we lost to Boston back in 2019, we did a fan watch party at the arena. I may or may
Mhm.
not have become a little bit too much of a fan and almost blew out my voice. So the next game we played at home against Boston, my voice was just shredded.
Oh,
But I've done
man.
it with near laryngitis. I've done it sick. I just don't miss games.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so what does a typical game day look like for you then? I'm assuming, you've got probably a pretty solid game day routine. What does that look like? And really, how has it changed since you've started?
I am such a creature of habit. If you give me a time between 4 in the afternoon and 10:30 at night on a game day, I can tell you exactly where I am and exactly what I'm doing. So I leave home. I work from home, so I leave home about 4 o'clock. I get to the arena about 4:30. Just kind of knock around a little bit. We'll have a production meeting at 5:30. I'm downstairs. I'm eating dinner, and then 6 o'clock, a lot of times I'll just walk the concourse and greet fans, talk to people. Warm ups start at 6:30. I walk the stands a little bit, come up, and before dinner, I'll usually go over pronunciations of players and names and information like that. Go over my script for the day. Walk the stands during warm ups, and then upstairs, and it's game time. So
Yeah.
before,
Uh,
before in the beginning, I would actually start earlier in the day when I worked outside the house, at different radio stations. I would actually at lunchtime, I would sit and I would go over names, and then I would go over names when I got to the building, and then I would go down and talk to the visiting radio guys to go over names again. I had a tough time with names in the very beginning. It was really, really hard.
I was gonna say with hockey, you get so many of those,
Yeah.
the Russian names and things like that. Are there any that you can think of that kind of stick out that you kind of dreaded or currently dread seeing on a roster?
Nobody that I really Nobody that I really dread missing. What I do hate is I hate to get them wrong. I really, really hate to get them wrong because weirdly, I think everyone in the world is listening to me specifically to see if I say it right. I know they're not. I'm background noise, right?
Yeah.
But to me, it's really, really important to get those players' names right. But, once you say a Vyacheslav Kozlov or, a Nitamaki, Nito Niederreiter, you start throwing
Yeah.
those names around a couple of times, and after those teams have been through, you start to get it, and you start to remember. But I still go down and I'll still talk to the visiting radio booth because if I'm going to be wrong, I'm going to be wrong the same way they're wrong.
Yeah. Yep. Um, so what is your favorite thing about getting to be the PA announcer for the Columbus Blue Jackets?
I've never walked in there feeling like I'm going to work. Sometimes it is work because sometimes when we're in a losing streak or we're having a tough season, it's you still have to be enthusiastic. There's nothing worse than being down 4 goals with a minute and a half left and you're going on a power play, right?
Mhm.
But that's what it is. Um, I really feel like I am doing what I have been created to do. I have
Yeah.
been created to talk and talk and talk, and talk. Sometimes to the chagrin of my wife, but yeah, that's what I was made to do.
Yeah.
That's what I was made to do, and this is part of it. And this actually creates another platform for me to share things like my faith and things like I have a lot of people that ask me to talk to groups about owning a business, which I do. I have the opportunity to do charity work. My wife and I are deeply involved in the Central Ohio Alzheimer's Association.
Yep.
So this gives me a platform to do things that are bigger and more important than just being a hockey announcer.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I can kind of, attest to that myself because um, I work over at Ohio State. I work, I run the scoreboard for football. So doing that, I got to know Bob Kennedy really well. And
Right.
when he passed away, I got a phone call that he was always the PA announcer for the Alzheimer's flag football game that they have over at Otterbein, and I they called me and said, hey, he mentioned that you were interested in doing some of this stuff, and like you said, it's a matter of it lets you do so much more and be involved in so much more, which is something I really really enjoy. Um, and that's kind of why I started doing this is to go off of what you said too, because while PA announcers are a bit different because people hear you. They know exactly what you sound like. If you walked up to somebody and didn't say anything, I mean, you might be a little bit different because you're kind of publicly out there. But if any other PA announcer would walk up to somebody and not say anything, they would have no idea who they were. And so outside of what they say, on game days at games, I'm my goal is to kind of give people a platform to talk about things that they don't normally hear about. And so that's my whole reason for doing this. So it makes me happy you understand that and you kind of get that idea of how it lets you express yourself a little bit more. But what has been the hardest challenge in just working in sports so far?
Names were tough.
Yeah.
But really it's balancing. I have a business that I own and I run. This is a small part of that business, but it takes up time. So
Hmm.
now at 55, I hate saying that because I feel half my age, and my wife will tell you I act half of that. So you do the math. Um, so it's a long, long workday, a couple
Yeah.
times a week.
Yeah.
Hockey season can be a grind. It really, really can. You've got a full-blown business that you're running from 8:30 or 9 till 4 in the afternoon, then you hop in the car for a half an hour, and then you go down and you're back at work for another 6 hours, and it's that focus that can really grind you down. Um, that's the tough part, but we don't do it because, um, we we do it because we love it. I love
Exactly.
I love running my business. I love announcing hockey games. So
Yep.
I keep doing it.
And that's, I mean, that's like me. I'm a full-time electrical engineer, and then I do all this other stuff on the side. And people, they're like, "Do you ever have any downtime?" I'm, not really, but I don't really want any.
Right.
It's I
Downtime
prefer to
looks
be
good.
doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what advice do you have for someone who's thinking about getting into, and this can expand back into like your radio days as well. Just getting into the broadcasting industry, or somebody who wants to get into doing PA work and announcing work, but is not sure where to get started or what to expect. Um, what advice do you have for them?
Generally speaking, I like to tell people that you should act like there are 50 people behind you that are just as good as you are, because there are actually 100 people behind you that are just as good as you are. But you're the only person that can make sure that whomever it is, your future employer or this team that you want to work for, you have the opportunity to show them that nobody wants that job more than you do. This is how I ended up getting the job at QFM 96. I made sure that they understood that there was nobody that wanted the job that I was applying for more than I wanted the job that I was applying for. When I went to work for the Blue Jackets, when I when I applied for the position with the Blue Jackets. I mentioned I went to Pittsburgh and Chicago and Nashville. I went to all three of those cities on my own dime. I didn't
Wow.
ask somebody to pay me to fly me out so that I could train. I
Yeah.
went on my own dime, and I actually went through 7 auditions. I did all 5 of those preseason games for free. Now, I didn't realize it, but the audition was doing those hockey games, and I didn't get paid for them,
Yeah.
and didn't quite understand. There were some behind the scenes things that were going on, so I didn't know those things that were going on, but I continued to work really, really hard at it.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to work. Nobody's going to hand you anything anymore because,
No.
again, there are 100 people behind you that would love to do what you're doing.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, so back a couple years ago, I know the Columbus Dispatch did a feature on you with a YouTube video, and I
Oh,
noticed Mike Todd was floating around in the background. You guys seem to be pretty good friends. Is that true, or is that for TV only?
oh, pull up a chair around the fire, kids. Let me tell you a story about Mike Todd.
He's one of my
Mike,
favorite human beings. Just want to throw that out there.
Mike Todd is one of my favorite human beings on the face of the planet. I have known Mike Todd now for 35 years. I met Mike at the college radio station at OU, ACRN, the All Campus Radio Network. I may or may not have been recording a Van Halen album to cassette at the time because I was a poor college student. This guy pokes his head into a production studio and he goes, "Hey, is that the new Van Halen album?" I said, "Yeah, it is." That guy was Mike Todd, and that album was OU 812. And we became quick friends. In fact, we decided that we would do a morning show together on the college station. It changed, the staff changed every quarter so that everybody had an opportunity. So we did
Yeah.
the morning show together as Murray Todd and Moore, takeoff of Mary Tyler Moore, because, well, we only had one entry in the contest to name the morning show, and that was Mike's friend. I don't know if he got beer money or what for it, but at one time, Mike and I held the Ohio record for the longest radio marathon in Ohio history. We were on the air for 99.3 hours nonstop. That translates into 4 days, 3 hours, and 20 minutes of
That is
Mike and I on the air.
incredible.
We did it to raise money for our spring festival, our music festival at OU that we did every year called Spring Fest. So
Yeah.
we went on the air for 4 days nonstop and set an Ohio record. I think we beat some guys from Akron,
Oh, wow. Well,
ONE, WONE, right?
yeah, that's one. Yep, that's one of the Rubber City radio stations. Yeah,
And if I remember right, they called us and congratulated us on breaking the record.
that's
But
funny.
fast forward 10 or 15 years or however many years it was, I think that was 1988. Fast forward to 2003, 2004, and the Blue Jackets were in the need for an arena host. And Mike called me out of the blue and he said, "Hey, I'm thinking about applying for this arena host job." And I said, "Well, buddy, you might as well just plan on getting it because you would be perfect for the job."
Absolutely.
Didn't think anything of it. Didn't say anything to anybody, but I happened to run into my boss who did the hiring the day after auditions. And I said, "Hey, how did my buddy do with the audition?" And she goes, "Who was that?" I said, "Mike Todd." And she goes, "Oh, he was really good. He's one of the 3 that we're going to bring back." So they brought him back and he ended up getting a job and he's been the arena host for however many years it's been now. I can't do the math
Yeah.
anymore. Almost 20 years now. What's interesting is working with Mike and knowing Mike makes my job so much easier. We used to do a pregame show together.
Yep.
So we have a good connection of knowing where the other is in the show and what's going on, which makes my job easier, knowing that Mike's going to do his job and Mike knowing what I'm doing. It really makes doing what we individually do a lot
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, the I can say hands down Nationwide has the best just in arena experience as far as the personalities go. You know.
There's a reason that so back in 2016, right, when we
Yeah.
had the All-Star game, there is a reason that the NHL has had Mike Todd work every single All-Star game since then. There is a reason that they bring him in and fly him in. I think he manages the mascots
Yeah.
and does stuff at
Yeah.
every single All-Star game, and it's not because he's pretty. It's because he is really, really good.
He no, he really is. And I mean, it's the same. I got to know him, not great, but fairly well through all of the watch parties that the Jackets put on this past season. And just going to those, hanging out there, and it's so much fun just spending time with him and talking with him. I think the best though was the draft watch party that we had over at Pins. I don't think I've ever seen anybody as exhausted as he was at the end of that. I went to say goodbye to him, and he was just sitting in a chair at Pins, just like I thought he was getting ready to pass out. He was so
We
tired
are
from
getting older.
all the up and down, but it's great. He's another one that I do definitely need to get him on here and talk to him. But
You don't want us both on at the same time because the stories would just go on and on and on.
I wouldn't mind. It would make my life easy. I
Oh,
would just
so much.
introduce the two of
Oh,
you
we
and
love
just go. I would just walk away. But no, it's got to be awesome just knowing that you get to go to work not only and do something that you love, like you said, but to basically just get to work with alongside one of your best friends. Even though you're doing two different things, you're still right there with him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we actually DJ'd each other's weddings.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's really the last question I have regarding your work as a PA announcer and your professional side. I do have a couple quick questions that I ask everybody who comes on. Um, as you can tell by looking, I have my wall of Blue Jackets behind me, and
I like that.
all of my kind of broadcasting experience has come because of hockey. A lot of my friends are involved in hockey, and things like that. So, first question, we call them our power play questions. Basically, is where I was going
Okay.
with that. um,
Fire away.
so, what is your favorite sports venue that you have been to?
My favorite sports venue, aside from Nationwide Arena,
Yes.
has to be right up the road at Ohio Stadium. I considered going to Ohio State for college, and I didn't because it was too big for me. So I ended up at Ohio University, which phenomenal school, amazing school. When I walk into Ohio Stadium, there are times where I go, "Man, I should have gone to school here," because the atmosphere of that building is second to none. It is such an experience to attend an Ohio State football game. It really is because there's such tradition and it's it's just so amazing to be inside that because again, you're in Columbus, Ohio, rabid fans, right? They are so behind their team, very much
Yeah.
like your CBJ fans. The
Yep.
other place is, out in Las Vegas, where the Vegas Golden Knights play. I think it's still T-Mobile Arena,
I think
um,
so.
where the Vegas Golden Knights play. When they came into the league, the guy who was responsible for building the show, his name was John Greco. John worked for us at the CBJ years before,
Okay.
and John put together just this incredible show, and the way that that fan base has embraced that team from the beginning. Now that whole thing was just caught up in because that's when that shooting happened
Yep.
at
Yep.
at the resort.
Country. Yeah, the
Yeah,
concert.
and that just galvanized that whole city, and it further galvanized that team to that fan base. And I have heard tale told that after the shootings, which happened like a week before opening night for the Vegas Golden Knights, they
Yeah,
completely rebuilt a show
really.
with good reason, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But the level of excellence that they do a hockey game in Vegas is phenomenal as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to work my way around to all the arenas. That's what I'm really excited for.
Yeah.
Uh, hopefully, hopefully in the next few years. All right, this one might already know the answer to it. Saying that to all the PA announcers I talk to here. What is your favorite venue that you have worked in?
Obviously, Nationwide Arena.
It's got to be. Um, your favorite sports memory can be jackets, can be something from when you were growing up that you went to a game with your family or something like that. What's your favorite sports memory?
My favorite sports memory is Jackets related, and it has nothing to do with play. It was opening night, the season after Mr. McConnell passed, our
Hmm.
owner.
Yep.
I had the opportunity to MC the event that we did in his honor. And I still have a picture. It is taken from up top. I think Jamie Sabo, one of our photographers at the time, took it. And it is me at center ice, and on either side of me are projections of Mr. Mac. And we did a moment of silence in that building. And I was struck when I did it. It was so quiet when we did the moment of silence for Mr. Mac that I could hear the HVAC system of the arena going up
Wow.
in the roof.
Yeah.
Um, it was just one of those poignant moments of honoring a man who brought a team to a city because he believed that we needed a professional sports team.
Absolutely. Um, and then the final question: if you could attend any sporting event, what would it be?
Stanley Cup playoff. Not a Stanley Cup playoff, a game 7 in which Columbus plays and Columbus wins, and I get to announce the entrance of the Stanley Cup, and I finally get to touch it.
Yeah, no, I would. I would be in that building somewhere. I could tell you that. I don't know where it would be. Probably in the last row of the upper deck somewhere. But I will be. I would be there. Um, it's been awesome talking with you. I appreciate your time. But right now, this is your time. I know we kind of talked about. You talked about some things earlier. How you love a part of this job that you love is that you get to talk about more than just hockey. So if there's anything that you want to talk about, anything you want to plug or anything like that, this is your time.
Well, yeah, probably the biggest thing, and it's probably because it just happened. My wife and I are deeply involved in the Central Ohio Alzheimer's Association. We lost Julie's mom back in 2017 to Alzheimer's, and she was as close to being my mom as my mom is my mom. I love Nana. We miss her. And so we have gotten deeply involved with the Central Ohio Alzheimer's Association, and we advocate for them. We work with Colleen Marshall from NBC4. We are the co-chairs of the Central Ohio Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is coming up on September 24th, which coincides with the first preseason game. So I will go from Columbus Commons and the Walk to End Alzheimer's over to Nationwide Arena for our first preseason game of the year, and we hold a charity golf outing that we started 3 years ago, and we have managed at this point after 3 years to raise about $120,000 for the
Wow,
Central Ohio Alzheimer's Association. Yeah, we're really proud of that. We're really happy to be able to do that, but it's something that's very close to us. Obviously, it hit very close to home. It's very important to us to be able to do this, and so we're deeply involved with the Central Ohio Alzheimer's Association, and are really happy to be a part of that.
that's awesome. And yeah, like I said, I was lucky enough to be asked to do PA for the flag football game that they had for that organization over at
Yeah, I didn't
Otterbein
know that Bob Kennedy, was
this
involved with that, and I didn't
yeah,
know if
this
it was
past
through the
summer.
association or if it was through, because I believe he went to, did Bob not go to Otterbein?
He did go to Otterbein. I'm not sure. I want to say, and don't quote me on this. I want to say that his one of his either mom or dad
Okay.
had Alzheimer's, and that's kind of how he got involved. But honestly, until I did that, and I started getting emails with different script reads and stuff like that, I didn't realize how much good the organization actually did and how much they were actually doing. And so I told the guys there, if there's ever anything I can do to help you guys out, let me know. And I'll put a link to, if you want to send me anything, I'll put a link in the description to the episode, to any um, websites or fact organizations or anything like that. Happy to share any of that stuff.
Awesome.
It's a great cause, and because I personally have never been affected by it. I don't have any family members who've had it, but one of my best friends from back home in Akron is very involved in it because his grandfather had it. So, um, but I'm happy to help out wherever I can, and like you said, use the platforms that we have for bigger and better things. So, um, Greg, I really appreciate you coming on, talking with me. I'm looking forward to hearing you in the arena in the next couple weeks. Got a little under a month left until the first preseason game, so
Yeah.
we're counting down days. Finally, we're done with months. So I appreciate your time, and thanks again.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Dave. I appreciate the opportunity to come on with you.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me on another episode of Into the Stands, the podcast where I unravel the fascinating tales of sports and entertainment personalities. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. A big shout out to our friends over at Around the Fifth Line. It's a Blue Jackets based debate show that you can catch on YouTube as well as on all podcast platforms. If you're craving in-depth discussions about the game, they've got you covered. And for the latest hockey news and news focused on the Blue Jackets, head over to thn.com/Columbus, home of the Hockey News Columbus, with articles written by Jason Newland. Stay in the loop with the freshest insights and updates. Follow Jason on Twitter at F1RETheCannon for even more hockey goodness. Connect with us on social media. Follow me personally at The Scoreboard Guy, SCRBRD, and at Into the Stands for the latest on upcoming guests and exclusive behind-the-scenes content. We love hearing from our community, so drop us a message and suggest guests for future episodes. As we wrap up today's show, let's remember the wise words of both Wayne Gretzky and Michael Scott. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Until next time, this has been The Scoreboard Guy. Dave Fetzer, thank you for listening.